Hey everyone, so it's about 10 o'clock Saturday morning. I'm getting ready for this coming week. I have a couple of shoots. It's crazy. It seems like it's either really slow or really busy for me. There's never like a middle ground. Like the last 2 weeks, I didn't really have much going on besides working from home. There were a couple of random shoots here or there, but nothing worth documenting. I mean, a lot of the live stream stuff that I do is kind of boring, so, and you guys have already seen that a bunch, so I didn't make a vlog out of it. But yeah, I have 3 shoots this week. They're all talking head interviews, and they're with like more like high profile people, so I have to have everything on a cart because a lot of their business space is on the 40th floor in like downtown Little Rock, and it takes about 20 minutes to get up there from my car once I'm parked, so I can only make one trip. So that's what I'm planning for. 2 camera interview, and then I have a 600D that I'll use as key light, bunch of batteries, audio package, slate. I have an 8 by unbleached muzz that I'll use as kind of the diffusion instead of setting up a softbox. Well, I don't really know what their office space looks like, so if there's a lot of space, I'll use the 8 by on like a little T-bar, something like that. But if it's really cramped in there, I'm probably just gonna put up a softbox, like an aperture softbox or something. I have a couple of tube lights on this side as well. The aperture tube lights, or Amaran tube lights. I always get confused between aperture and Amaran. To me, they're all just aperture. And then I have 2 tripods in here, 2 light stands, and then I'll put some C-stands on the end of the cart here. Might have to move these stingers a little bit. Sorry, there's a dang horsefly. Yeah, I'll have to move those guys to fit the C-stands. I have some more cables here. These are XLR for audio. I usually run a boom and then I'll run a lav as well for each person, try and hide the lav. But then out of my mixer, I'll go into camera as like a backup. Got a bunch of batteries lined up that I'll probably use so I don't have to run power to cameras. That's just one less thing I have to do, because it's crazy. Every one of these interviews are in different locations. So I think I have an hour setup, an hour interview, and then like a half an hour strike, which makes no sense, but it's all good. But they're all in different locations, and there's like 6 or 7 over the span of the 3 days. I still have to get the final call sheet, but that's kind of the game plan. Yeah, I'll see you guys over there. Hey everyone, so I made it to location right now, just on standby waiting for someone to come open up a gate for me. I'm at a university, and there's lots of like security clearance and whatnot, so I have to wait for my contact to get here so that way we can go in at the same time. So you may be wondering how I got this job. So this is through a local production company here in Little Rock, and they usually send me out when they have an excess of work. So maybe they're double booked and they don't want to cancel on a client, so they'll usually hire me as like a DP to come in and just make it happen. They will usually send out like a producer or a director. They just really need someone to handle the production side of things. So cameras, lights, audio, that sort of thing. So that's where I come into play as like kind of a one-man band, working with a producer or a director to make sure everything is getting captured correctly. I'm not on retainer with this production company or anything. They usually just contact me a few times a month, especially during like busy months or busy seasons. They'll usually keep a steady stream of work coming my way. So on this project, I'm not doing any of the post. I'm only doing the filming, and then I'm handing off cards at the end of each day to the producer so that they can back up to a hard drive. So that's always nice, being able to walk away from a project and not have to worry about editing or anything. Whenever I'm in charge of video only, I definitely try to make it very easy for post-production. So I have all cameras synced via timecode, and just I have audio running from the mixer to the camera, so that way they have a backup audio. I always try and do all the right things so that post-production is very smooth. I don't want to be the kind of DP where they rely on editing in post. Unless it's a project that I'm doing and I know my limitations on editing and what I can do and what I can't do, then sometimes I will push it a little bit, or maybe not sync time code. But if I'm definitely not doing the post, I try to make it as easy as possible, so that way, you know, I get hired again. And for the iPad setup, I know I've mentioned this setup before in the past, but if this is the first time watching one of my videos, I'm using the Teradek Serv transmitters, and those are streaming to a Wi-Fi signal, and then that Wi-Fi signal is going into my iPad via the viewer app. So that's how I'm able to monitor two camera feeds on one iPad, is through that Teradek Serv system. So I would definitely look into that if you're wanting that kind of setup. And I know I talk a lot about my cart, and you guys see it in like all my videos, but I definitely can't stress it enough how valuable the cart is, not only in streamlining my process of having everything I need living on one cart. And I know obviously if I needed a much bigger setup, then I wouldn't be able to do this, but because it's only a 2-camera setup with, you know, very minimal lighting and that sort of thing, I'm able to fit everything on one cart. And that's just so nice. Like the producers and the directors love that I'm able to set up everything so quickly, and I'm able to not have to make a ton of trips back and forth to the car, and everything's just very streamlined. You could definitely do that with other carts. I'm not saying Innovative is the only cart, but just for me, I've had pretty much every single cart out there. I've built my own. I've had rock and roller carts, and I'm not saying those are bad or anything. It's just they don't last as long. I've had this cart for over a year now, and honestly, it's built like a tank. It's able to navigate through really small doors perfectly, and it's just the right size for my setup and my van and all that. So that's the one challenging part about working in multiple locations in one day. I didn't get any pictures of the rooms beforehand in post-production or anything. So I literally am seeing the space for the first time, and you really have to quickly analyze the space and see what's going to work. Typically in a standard room, there's only a few options, so you really just have to pick the one that works best for you and your environment. Even if you can ask the producer, like, okay, what are they kind of talking about? That could even lead you to maybe showcasing their desk or showcasing their achievements or something like that in the background. That could narrow down your decision as well. But I think that is something you really have to develop in this industry, is just being able to walk into a room and within a few minutes being able to analyze it and pick the best spot, the best location for whatever you're filming. But yeah, now to get to the Sony Burano camera. I literally woke up this morning and saw the specs of the camera, just a quick glance. I didn't do too much reading because I was on my way to the shoot. But I did see that Sony did release a new cinema camera, and I've been kind of in the market for possibly upgrading my FX3s. When I originally purchased my FX3s in 2021, I didn't really want the FX3. I was actually in the market for getting 2 FX6s or 2 FX9. Sony had a crazy back order on the FX6 and FX9, and they were just not in stock. Even on the used market, I think the FX6 was, you could maybe pick one up on eBay for like 3 times the price. and it just was not worth it for me to spend $15,000 on an FX6, especially when I needed to purchase two of them. So at the time, after doing a ton of research, I saw that they did have some FX3s in stock, and looking at the specs, they were pretty similar to the FX6. Liked the form factor of the FX6 better than the FX3 because I was coming from a Sony FS5 package. I didn't want to go back to an Alpha series, DSLR type body. But yeah, I was really needing some new cameras, so I just went ahead and pulled the trigger on the FX3s. But after using the FX3s for about a year, I didn't really see the value in upgrading to an FX6 or FX9. I just kept saying, like, maybe, Sony will release something, because that's what they typically do every year, is release a new camera. So I just kept holding out until I found a camera that I wanted to upgrade to that was kind of the latest, and just hold out as long as I could. So when I woke up and saw this Burano camera, I immediately thought, man, I need to pull the trigger and pre-order one. Like, I think this is the camera I've been waiting for. And, it's a little bit steeper on the price, $25,000 compared to, like an FX9, which is around the $10,000 mark now. So it would be a huge investment, and I would need to buy two, because a lot of the work that I do, I love having matching cameras. So that's about $50,000 in camera gear. And once I got home and I started looking more at the specs, I just realized there's one thing that I just cannot get on board with. Every other spec of the camera I think is fantastic. Sony's definitely going in the right direction. Just one thing that wouldn't work for me in my workflow, the 8K sensor, which I feel like is great, but a lot of the work that I do is still in 1080 and sometimes 4K. But with the Burano, it crops in at 6K and 4K. So I definitely cannot make that work. I love when I put on a lens, a 50mm, it actually being a 50mm and not being an 85 or a 75 or 100mm, like whatever the crop factor is. I just don't think I can make that work. And I know most people will say, well, just film in 8K and then export your videos in 4K or 1080 or whatever resolution you need. But if you have not done an 8K workflow, especially with editing and data storage and all that, it is a nightmare. I do a lot of editing with a company that uses the V-Raptor, the red V-Raptor, and they send me 8K footage all the time, and it is a lot of work. Editing a 30-40 minute interview in 8K just takes a lot of data and a lot of computing power, and it's just a lot of work. And I have a pretty beefed up computer, and even then it's still a lot of work. So I don't think I'm going to pull the trigger on the Burano. So a lot of my work is long form corporate interviews or multicam shoots that are a little bit longer takes, or even live stream. I do a lot of those types of gigs. It just wouldn't make sense to have an 8K camera for me personally. Maybe if I was doing a little bit more like narrative work or like short films or maybe even features, it makes sense to want to get the maximum quality for a 30-second take or a 1-minute take. I think that totally makes sense, and that's where this camera is going to shine. But just for what I'm doing, I don't think it makes a lot of sense. But all that to say, I'm super happy with the way Sony is going, and I just hope they come out with the FX6 Mark II or FX9 Mark II or something kind of more along those lines. But yeah, thanks so much, guys. I appreciate you watching the vlog, and please leave any comments below, and I'll make sure to respond to them, and I'll see you guys in the next one.